I now call this special workshop meeting of the Jacksonville City Council to order. And before you, council, you have a copy of the proposed agenda for tonight's meeting. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have the one item here. It's a status report for the advisory committee for City Council Summit. And Dr. Woodruff, I'll turn to you at this time to introduce your topic for tonight.
Thank you very much. Mayor, members of council, welcome to warm City Hall on a very cold day. We do want to begin by thanking the public for remembering that this week is a short week relative to customer service. Have a lot of folks who put their garbage cans out yesterday, but they all got picked up today. We will be running one day off. Tomorrow, the Wednesday schedule, people usually on Tuesday, we picked up Wednesday, then Thursday on Thursday, Friday on Friday. This evening, as we come to the workshop, we look back on the summits which the mayor and council have had with the advisory boards in 2014 and then in 2015. In doing the summit in 2015, we realized that the staff did not really give a full report on the 5 priorities which you and the advisory boards established in the summit of 2014. So tonight what we'd like to do is go through those 5 topics. We'd like to begin, though, with the economic development, although that was ranked 4th. In courtesy to folks who are from the outside world, we would like to have you give them the opportunity to report on economic development first. At the end of that, we will also have Deanna Tribble come up, and she is going to talk about the efforts the city is making relative to capital improvements that are related to economic development. The 2 parts are essential. While the private sector with the EDC and the chamber and private businesses are essential, it is also important that you and we as a city government do what we can to make sure that roads, water and sewer and so forth are in place to assist in economic development. So those will be your first 2 presentations. They will then be followed by an update on the issue of convention and meeting rooms, then recreation water features, addressing codes and livable neighborhoods, and then we'll close by talking about lowering taxes. We've asked Mr. Thomas to be here to discuss the lowering taxes part.
Are you for it or against it?
I'm still thinking.
Okay.
But we will give you some of the challenges that always addresses. But at this time, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand down and let another member of the EDC come up and make their presentation, which will begin by Sheila Pierce.
Defer to Ed.
Good evening. My name's Ed Garris. I have the pleasure of serving as the chairman of Jacksonville Economic Development. And before I proceed, I'd like to thank some of our board members for being present tonight. Our vice chairman, Joey Carter, Ron Lingle, who's on our executive committee, and also Cheryl Bear, who's our glue in the office. So thank you guys for being here. We appreciate the time to come and give you an update. We know you have a time-consuming task of running the city, and we are appreciative of your time. First of all, I'd really like to thank Ron Massey. Ron, I've been involved for several years now, and he is a consistent member of our executive committee, and we very much appreciate his input. It's invaluable. He's part of our team. We'd like to be able to have the opportunity to do this on a more frequent basis to keep you guys in the loop, because this does take a lot of teamwork, as Sheila will speak to, and we consider you guys part of our team as we try to grow jobs in this community. I think that's all I had to cover, so I would like to turn it over to Sheila, who will dazzle you with a slideshow here of her recent activity, which is, I don't see how these guys get it all done, and y'all should be thankful to have these 2 representing the county and the city. So turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Ed. Again, good to see you all again. Sheila Pierce Knight. I'm trying to get used to that new last name, so I'll have an opportunity to share that. And I know you all are certainly familiar with Dan Oliver. And the 2 of us, along with Cheryl, are a 3-man hardworking team. And we enjoy what we do. Thank you for having us here. We wish to give you an update on the progress in our 2015-16 business plan. And I have a few slides here which I can move through fairly quickly because it's the big concept that I really want to have an opportunity to talk about and leave on the table. But if you have questions, feel free to stop me, or we'll certainly engage, hopefully, in some great dialogue at the end. I know you know who we are, the Jacksonville-Onslow Economic Development Office, and what our mission is about to foster economic growth. As Ed mentioned, and you're going to see mentioned multiple times tonight, this is a team event. Joe Ed may certainly try to serve as a coach, and sometimes, often a cheerleader, and sometimes a traffic cop, but it's very much a team event. Our 15-16 business plan basically had 4 strategies: marketing and outreach, market and asset development, workforce and entrepreneurial, and organizational and regulatory. I'm going to focus on the first 2 this evening because, quite frankly, that's what we've been focusing on for the most part in our activities. Because ultimately, the first 2 are all about reaching prospects and then creating a portfolio of products that can meet their needs, so that we can have an opportunity to sell our community. The strategic plan outlines the best opportunities for return on investment of our limited marketing dollars, and that is through the collaboration of many of our partners. I've listed a few here. I think some of this alphabet soup, which is on the slide of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, the North Carolina Southeast Partnership, which we have recently joined in addition to our long-standing relationship with the North Carolina East Alliance, the relationship with the North Carolina Economic Developers Association, which is a trade association from across the state of North Carolina, all of our allies, which of course, you know, Jones-Onslow, EMC, Duke Energy, and others, the railroads, et cetera, and then, of course, the North Carolina Defense Business Association, which we have recently established a presence here in Onslow County. But the purpose of that collaboration, quite frankly, is to stretch our marketing dollars. It's to enable us to reach more opportunities, and it's to generate calls. I know all of you know my background's in real estate for 30 years, so I have a hard time leaving the comparisons, but it's all about making the phone ring. And once the phone rings, it's about getting the appointment. It's not much different from many other types of sales, because that is truly what we are. So the goal is very simple: to generate the calls, to get a site visit. Economic development marketing is very expensive. It just makes sense for us to collaborate and spread our dollars with other people that are working on the same goal. Some examples of the prospecting that we are doing, have done, or will be doing this year in collaboration with these partners. These are all geared toward our target markets, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. But these are examples of the ones that we already have done or have scheduled. We vie for many of these events in collaboration with our partners. And in many cases, we also have to commit to them a year in advance. And this is one of the many reasons we need a reliable, adequate, and long-term funding plan in order to basically stay in the game. Because there's one thing that we've learned, is that if you're not at the table in economic development, you are most definitely on the menu. The target industries that have basically evolved in our marketplace: defense and aerospace industries, manufacturing of all types, agribusiness, which is a huge industry sector, professional services, and marine trades. These have ultimately been selected or focused on because we feel they're going to be compatible with our market and with our community assets. I realize that, or want to point out that traditional economic development, which is what Joe Ed for the most part focuses on, that most of these types of industries might not, in fact, be the type that would ultimately maybe locate within the city limits of Jacksonville. But I think everyone at this table can agree that whatever jobs we can bring to our community that are inside the boundaries, certainly of Onslow County, or truth be known, maybe even slightly outside, would ultimately be of benefit to all the residents of the community, and certainly within the city of Jacksonville, since the majority or a great portion of the residents of the county live within the city limits. And of course, all of them wind up shopping here. So I think we can agree that what's good, whatever is good all the way around for all of us. We track all incoming inquiries into our office, and we break them into basically three categories. One of them is inquiries, and we get a lot of inquiries for just basically data and demographics. And that could be for anybody that is considering moving into Jacksonville. Quite frankly, most of the restaurants or businesses that have opened up, especially along Western Boulevard over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, I have probably spoken to at least a year in advance before they ever walked into the halls of City Hall to talk about planning or ordinances, et cetera, because they're doing their homework, they're doing their due diligence in advance. I so knew about Krispy Kreme so long ago and couldn't say anything. I was so excited, as with many of them. We get calls about market trends and even about real estate. And again, I think that, again, here's where my history in Jacksonville and Onslow County, 35 years, and a lot of that being in real estate has enabled me to hopefully be an asset to a lot of those calls. We talk to anyone that calls in. We do our best to help them or to direct them to whatever needs they may have so that they can make the decision that Jacksonville and Onslow County is going to be a good place for them to do business. The second category of our tracking basically are leads and prospects. And we're going to talk a little bit about the types of leads and prospects that we get and how we track them and what we do with that information. Basically, we think it's important to track them because we need to make sure that our marketing dollars and our product development decisions are being made with the best information we have available. A lead or a prospect is a potential client for a new or expanding industry. Fiscal year to date, our fiscal year starting July 1st, we've had 36 what we call bona fide leads and prospects, and that's actually a good number. Most of those, as you'll see in a minute, we'll show you what the sources come from. Of those 36 leads that have come in, we still have 16 that are active on the books, and they're active in that we are still working them, or we do not yet know that we've been eliminated from that market. So that's the year to date. The relationships with our partners, you'll see, are invaluable. Those leads by source are from the Economic Development Partnership, the East Alliance, and the Southeast. And we combine those two because sometimes we'll get the same lead through both of them. So we don't want to skew the numbers by counting them separately. And quite frankly, sometimes a lead may come through the partnership in North Carolina and come by virtue of through one of the regional partnerships, but we keep all those numbers separate, so we're not double counting here. As well as the leads that we can generate ourselves and other leads that can come from a local broker, an ally, et cetera. We have recently joined, in fact, last fall, we joined the North Carolina Southeast Partnership, which now makes us a part of the two partnerships that extend from the Virginia border down to the South Carolina border. We did that after a lot of due diligence and realizing that we think we can get the best exposure to various markets. Each one of them had industry sectors that we aligned with and felt that would be good. Each one of them had a slightly different business model in terms of how they market their product and the services that they provide us. So it spreads us a little thin sometimes in staying on top of everything, but we felt that we're getting the biggest return on some marketing dollars by being involved in both of those partnerships. And it's because of the new partnership with the Southeast Partnership that we're starting to see a little bit of a spike, in that red tower, because they are very strongly geared toward marketing, and so we're starting to see a lot of activity coming through them. They're very, very involved in going out to the trade shows and the consultant events, et cetera. The other benefit of being a part of these regional economic development partnerships is that they get to know our community. They come here, they visit with us, we take them on existing industry visits, or they'll meet with us when we're interviewing or meeting with some potential prospects. They get to know our community, so therefore they can help sell it even before we know that we might even be considered for a prospect. So it's important that they help sell us. Just a tidbit of information, we track our leads and prospects request by type in terms of basically what is the primary criteria they are asking for. And this pie chart is getting pretty indicative of the world that we live in and what we've been sharing with everybody for a while. Great proportion of our inquiries require a building. And the building meaning the main factor. It doesn't mean that they don't also possibly need land, or in some cases they might consider a build-to-suit, but if they want an existing building, then that's what that box is. Some cases they need acreage, so obviously land is a factor. And the other is if a main criteria could be they have to have a rail served site. Then we just count that as an other, because in all honesty, it didn't matter if we had the building to meet their need or not if we were going to get knocked out of the loop because it had a feature that we couldn't meet. It could be an excessive water usage. It could be an excessive power usage, or some things that we're unable to meet. But that's just gives you an idea of how these, particularly 36 inquiries that have come in since the 1st of July, break down in terms of what their needs are. The reason the overwhelming majority of these requests are looking for existing buildings, quite frankly, as many of you in the room who run businesses know, the speed of cost of opening that business is important. They want to get there sooner rather than later. Speed is king, and it's quite frankly driven those requests to want to get started. They just simply do not want to go through the process in many cases unless they have a very specific need to start from scratch, go through the permitting process. Especially here, maybe in the eastern part of North Carolina, where we have some additional requirements to meet, and to take that much longer to get to their market. And the fact that there has been in the past, at least the past few years, a lot of inventory out there for them to choose from means that they've not had to wait it out. They can find that inventory. I likened this recently, quite frankly, to car sales. I was raised by a car dealer, and I remember, gee, I sure hope I'm not dating myself too badly. I remember when my father's dealership had a showroom and had about 3 or 4 cars in it, and people would walk in, kind of look at the model that was on the floor, but then walk over to the desk, sit down, look through the manuals, and pick out all the features they wanted in their car, order it, and wait 3 months for it to come. Of course, the world has changed now. If you look at car dealerships, they're sitting there with hundreds and hundreds of cars in inventory, trying to meet every imaginable mixture of features that somebody could want, so that somebody could walk on the lot and buy it now. Because if you don't have what they want on the lot today, they're going to go to the next lot. And that's basically what we're facing in economic development right now. If we don't have what they want, there's a lot of communities down the road that do. So it's gotten incredibly competitive, and this is why one of the reasons we're trying to track this is so that we can make better decisions about how to try to meet the needs of those that we have the interest in or have the ability to meet those needs. The third piece of information that we track, that my board finds information, is how many of the leads and prospects requests that we get in are we able to respond to. So of that 36, I hope my numbers match there, 36 that we got in, we were able to respond to 19. And actually, that is a very improved response number, literally over the last 6 or 8 months. Unfortunately, or it was due to the unfortunate availability of White Street, which was formerly occupied by Oshkosh Defense. The availability of that 50,000 square foot building has allowed us to actually respond to a much greater number of those requests that required a building. The goal, of course, of this RFI process, I know I've shared with that before, we kind of call it the funnel, is to stay in the game as long as we can. So the goal is to respond to the RFI. And we joke around the office saying sometimes when they send in their list of criteria, we don't mind leaning forward and taking 1 foot off the floor to kind of say that we can meet your needs. I don't want to fall flat into a mud puddle, but we really want to try to make sure that we can be considered. So our goal is to stay in that process as long as possible and to get that site visit. So it helps that we're able to respond to as many as we have been. We also track our leads and prospects by industry segment. Again, especially our targeted industries, we want to see if we're on track, so that we can make adjustments as necessary. This just gives you, again, an overview. The specific categories are probably not as important as realizing that we track them by those industry segments to see if there's opportunities that we need to be paying attention to, or that we have missed. And sometimes people ask what the other is. Sometimes the other is an unknown. We'll get a request sometimes, like we specifically had a request for the White Street building, but did not have any idea what it was. We suspected manufacturing, but because we didn't specifically know, we would list it under other. Some solar projects that have come in are listed under other, IT projects, some things that just don't fit the other categories. Market and asset development being the second strategy in our business plan that we're focusing on right now. It does no good to bring a prospect to town if you don't have a product to sell them. Or as, again, my father said, you can't sell from an empty wagon. So that's why we worked equally as hard on working with our community to be sure that we have some product in hand. Many of you were able to attend last summer the Duke Site Readiness Program, where Mark Sweeney, consultant, came into town and helped us with some, helped the property owner, I should say, with some plans for the Camp Davis Industrial Park down in Holly Ridge. You are aware certainly that we're in the process of trying to expand some property availability in Burton Business Industrial Park. Quite frankly, Jacksonville Business Park is prepared, ready, infrastructure is in place, so that is a very good site, again, for the any professional service businesses that we may get requests from. And just a note there, because of the traditional nature of economic development, the business partners that we have, they are aware that we have that special need, although that may not often fall within a lot of the type of projects or clients that they're working with. We've made sure that they're aware that they understand that that's a special opportunity in our market that we want to address. That's outside the realm of, I'll say, the traditional economic development target industries. And that all I need now is just find somebody to go in there and build a building for me. We're also working with local property owners that we know will do a build-to-suit. And again, several of those actually are inside the city limits. And when I have an inquiry for a 5, a 10, a 15, or a 20,000 square foot building, they're on speed dial. And they stand ready to help and been very, very cooperative. I know that the city of Jacksonville has been very aggressive in identifying some areas of town that they feel are good, prime for redevelopment. And specifically a need that we've identified over the last few years, or you all certainly have identified, and that's the need for some additional maybe flex space. And so we are continuing to try to identify people that could help us get that developed. Again, needing the product on the ground whenever possible. And we work very closely with my old crew of real estate brokers in town, to make sure that we maintain a portfolio of available properties. Again, when we get these requests for information in, they don't have a long lead time. We don't have time to go out and do our research very often. We'll get anywhere from 48 hours to maybe a week, but if you get one that allows a week, it usually is because they want a dossier of details and information. So we've got to have all of our information handy and available when we get these requests so that we can submit them. Because if you don't meet the deadline, it's just one more reason to discount you and take you off the list. Active JOED projects that we have right now, and by the way, a project to us is a bona fide prospect that we have been engaged in back and forth, and or they've been here for a site visit, which is different from the leads. This is my real estate world, somebody that, you know, is rather than just communicating with someone or answering a request for information, it's somebody that we've actually developed a relationship. We are told that 5 active projects for an office our size is actually a good caseload because you spend a lot of time on these. Quite frankly, the 3 new projects can run hot and cold. You can spend a lot of time on them, and then they lay in wait for a little while they're making decisions or gathering other information. But the existing industry expansion opportunities, quite frankly, we spend a great deal of time with, and in trying to meet their needs to see what they could do. These 5 projects actually account for a potential new 103 jobs. So it counts up, you know, especially for a community our size. And of course, we look to constantly increase and grow those numbers. Another significant part of what we do, and I actually think it's probably the most significant thing, but it doesn't usually get all of the accolades, is that we try to spend a lot of time addressing our existing industry. We monitor about 25 existing businesses in Jacksonville and Onslow County. We engage with them once a week or once a year, depending on what their needs are and if we're in the middle of helping them address an issue. We think it's very, very important that they know that they're doing business here in Jacksonville and Onslow County is important, that they're appreciated, and that they have a one-stop source of information if they need anything. We tell them to be sure they realize that if you need something, you do not need to use a phone book, you do not need to figure out how to go through a switchboard, you just need to call us and we'll find out who to call to help you fix your problem. And we think we're getting pretty successful in conveying that message because of the calls that we do, in fact, get now from our existing industries. Some of them have nothing to do with economic development whatsoever, but that's a good thing because it's all about relationship building. So we call on them, we visit them, we try to find out what issues or problems they have that might be preventing them from expanding, or certainly making sure that they're in a position to continue to stay here and do business. And then we try to help find solutions for them, because they are, again, responsible for about 60 to 80% of job growth in the country nationwide, and I think we will follow suit with that. It just makes sense. You take care of what you have because it's much easier and much more cost efficient to take care of what you've got than to bring something new to town, quite frankly. Excuse me. Final thoughts, because this is, I guess, probably a little bit about our internal mission. Excuse me. Economic development, as you know, is a sales job. You know, oh, thank you. Every day, all of us, thank you, sir.
City of Jacksonville water.
I thought we sipped some Flint, Michigan water.
Oh, no. I drink this from the tap every night.
We appreciate it.
But it's certainly a sales job, but it's not just ours. You know, we may be the cheerleaders, but in the Economic Development Day for the leadership class last week, we emphasized that this is a team effort. Excuse me. That everybody is involved in selling Jacksonville and Onslow County, right down to the clerk in the convenience store or the hotel. I'm going to finish. It's the team event, and it doesn't happen by accident. So it does take that community effort to compete. The city of Jacksonville has been very aggressive in taking care of things that matter. They may not necessarily be immediate check boxes when we get that criteria list of a new industry looking to move here, but you can be sure the things that you've taken care of could eliminate us from the list once we had that site visit. You've gone above and beyond in taking care of many things around the community as far as the appearance and the roadways. You're very cognizant of not only the roads, but also the traffic issues and how that flows. And taking care of one of the needs that they have concerns about with their workers in terms of public transportation. That is often a checkbox in the request for informations that we get. You've identified those development zones that are prime for infill, regrowth, rebirth in order to not only generate more business in our community, but to certainly improve the appearance of the community. Your planning and permitting departments, I know, have been streamlined, and you've done what you can to try to make that process as painless as possible in order to encourage development. And all of those things ultimately matter a great deal in what we do. They just may not get the front row attention, you know, that they deserve in many cases. And finally, you know, economic development, I know you all know this, it's a long-term process. It is not for the faint at heart, and it's not for the impatient. You have to put a lot of things in place early on in order, like planting the seeds. You have to plant those seeds, you have to water them, and sometimes you have to weather some pretty bad weather to get to the point where hopefully you can harvest a crop at some point. if you're not in it for the long term, then you're not really in economic development. And I'm proud to say that our community has made that commitment to be in this for the long term. And that is making a difference. We have, I think, built upon what was before us, but I can honestly say that in the last 5 years, that your JOED team has really made a conscious effort to make sure that the entire state of North Carolina and the economic development world out there knows we're here, and they know we're in the game, and we're willing to play. And that's a big part of that, because as sales is about relationships, and all of us know that people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. Economic development is no different. So you have to still reach out and develop those relationships, even in the social media world that Cheryl wants to ramp us up in, and we're going to go there. The bottom line is it's still about relationships. You've just got to go make those contacts and shake those hands. Your team is dedicated to continue to moving forward on this process. We're getting ready to start our 2016-17 business planning process. You will shortly get an invitation to a March session where we will invite all of the electeds of the municipalities in the county to come together for like a pre-planning session prior to the Board of Directors meeting for their official Board of Planning session in April. I encourage you to please come to the table. It'll be a roundtable conversation where we can just kind of talk about the direction we're going and whether or not we need to tweak it or make some modifications, because ultimately it's important that this be that team effort, and we've all got to be on board with how we move forward and the direction that we're given. Again, the actions and strategies that we undertake for the purpose of making the phone ring, trying to get the appointment, and quite frankly, make the sale. So we will take all the assistance and cooperation and participation that we can get, certainly most assuredly from the city of Jacksonville, and we look for your input as we move forward. We stand ready to answer any specific questions. This is kind of big picture. I brought Dan. He gets in the weeds. So if you want some statistics or numbers and all, that's his strong point. But we'd love to engage in some dialogue as long as you have time.
A quick question. You have access to the city's master water and sewer plan, right, for long-range planning?
Was that a part of what we engaged in the?
What I'd say is that we know who to call to get that information.
I was just thinking that might be something that may be vitally important for the economic development unit to have some knowledge of for future development of businesses. And I'm not talking about next year or the year after, but I'm talking about down the road, in the future, to know where, availability is going to be.
Right.
Here in Osceola County.
Well, the less formal answer to that question, I think, is yes, because we've engaged in multiple conversations with Ron about some specific areas that we had some interest in asking what the plans were.
Because I know you made reference to the infrastructure criteria not being met in some of the responses that wasn't there, but what we want to have offered up is the fact that it might not be there today, but it might be there tomorrow. So whenever you're dealing with a particular industry or a company that may consider the thought of moving here, that you have that knowledge.
And Ron has shared with us areas that were important, frankly, before I saw the YouTube. I'm sure I knew what YouTube was a few years ago, but at any rate, the meeting that you had, the summit that you had to allow the information, that was very impressive. And it also, the key things, congestion, dealing with transportation. If you look at any list of criteria that folks who are looking to locate in an area, transportation, labor, cost, those will be in the top 5. There may be some special need that they have that will go in that 5, but those 3 will always be right at the top of the list. Water and sewer is a given. I can tell you, and some of the things that we have learned is there's some projects that we're not in the game for, not in Onslow County. We're not in the game for most 300-plus job operations. Couple of reasons is most of those require significant amounts of water and sewer, And we just simply aren't in a position to dedicate that to one sole project. So we'll be looking, when we look at the food industry, did take long to figure out, we're not gonna be in the front end processing of raw meat. While North Carolina is probably one of the largest producers in the nation of protein of all types, there's just some things that we're gonna need to be further down the processing chain where they're using less water, they're using less sewer requirements so that we could compete. So generally, we're gonna be looking at companies that are looking either at an expansion or the actual business that they're gonna enter and bring to the county will be in the 25 to 75 employee range. That's really gonna be our sweet spot. Now, the advantage is things have become so much more advanced in the way they produce their product that generally those are significantly higher paying jobs than our current average wage is. So there's a lining in that.
Has there been any headway made as far as the rail spur going from Jacksonville to Havelock, I believe it is? And can that be of any assistance
It
to
will
us?
certainly be of benefit. You want to answer that?
Well, I was just going to say, that's an ongoing and fluid opportunity at this point.
The study is moving forward. We just got an email today to have a steering committee meeting every month, starting hopefully next
February,
week. And we hope to set the framework out of that study for opportunities, that the base would be interested in, that would really benefit the area by being able to say, yes, we have rail. And there will be a lot of work to do if that comes out that way, because, some of those areas are not on the main highways, and so there'll be some highways to be built to get to some of those areas.
And we're not doing that in a vacuum. It actually has come to the attention of people throughout the state. This is an opportunity. So I think we're in a good position to get the players to the table that can help us make the most of that.
Is there any way, I know, I'm assuming that road network for to tie into the rail would be through the RPA, the rural planning folks, right?
Some of it, some of it.
So is there anything that our local MPO, metropolitan people can be looking at? I'm sure you've already engaged Anthony in that process to see if we can help look down the road and start programming some roads perhaps.
Yeah, what I personally see, most of that area obviously is in the county, that, at least the area that we would be going after. And so county's a key player. County has representation on the RPO. And yes, we certainly would work with the RPO. And I also see, the Military Affairs Commission as an ally in that, in helping us.
Yeah.
But I know with the Military Affairs Commission, there's a lot of discussions about some of the connecting links, of highways, say for example, that support the bases. And a lot of those links that need to be worked are in RPO areas. And that's a piece that I think the Military Affairs Commission is emphasizing with DOT, that we have got to, get these RPOs supportive of that.
One of the projects that I mentioned, of the five active projects we have right now, one of them is the project that is on a site that is on the rail that we've been working. And we hit the 4th birthday last October that I started that project. And I'm not slowing down. It's not over.
You mentioned before that a lot of businesses looking to locate or expand are looking for buildings.
Yes, sir.
We've had some luck with shell buildings. Is there any plan for another shell building effort?
You want me to take that? Okay, our Building and Sites
It's not a
Committee.
shell building.
No, yes. Our Building and Sites Committee has actually been through all the data that we're collecting, and this is just a 30,000-foot view, evaluating what we need. And yes, to be honest with you, we need a building, and we are evaluating what we can build. The next building that I think we will be moving toward will be probably done with a public-private partnership. To come to the table to build some version of a new industrial building. Whether or not that will be a shell, which is how it's finished out, remains to be seen. But we are looking to try to get one or more new industrial products up so that we can have an advantage in the responses. It's going to take it to.
What lessons were learned via the last Shell building that was?
Well, I'll answer part of that, but then a couple of the folks around me were here before me. Well, first of all, that Shell building sold in 4 years, and in Shell building life, that is actually a toddler. That was not bad. Part of its purpose, obviously, was to generate an opportunity for someone to come and move in. Unfortunately, 3 of those 4 years of its life were in the worst economic recession that we had experienced. So timing was bad for it. I wish I had it standing right now, but we're going to move toward that. So it's the lesson learned there would be, again, just to make sure that you evaluate what the market needs are, which they did a really good job. I don't know that if the money was free and available and I could just build one, then I wouldn't probably do something very similar to it, but I think we're going to be looking at something slightly smaller this time that we can easily expand.
Is there any method of provide incentives for this at all?
You mean in the speculative building process? Did you want to contribute? Just kidding.
I'm just going to take 4 years to.
Well, it's all about the ROI, right? So we have to.
I mean, you know, I know that we work with some other private concerns as far as, you know, providing, you know, land or what have you in exchange for, you know, providing jobs and that sort of thing, you know.
Right, and those opportunities are still there. It's about getting the prospects here to consider the marketplace, and then what their needs are will ultimately depend on what the ask may be or the offers might be from the appropriate entities.
Sheila, years ago, you know, we had a call to action about trying to lure industry and economic development in Townsville County, and you know, the city has responded. You know, we've got public transportation. We've got millions of dollars worth of intelligent transportation system now. That's just unbelievable. You know, we control traffic patterns. We're able to monitor and make moving around Jacksonville a lot more efficient. We're almost complete with our bike and ped plan, which is, you know, quality of life issues, what was a big topic of conversation years ago. We have excellent water access, another quality of life. We've, I think, taken down over 50 structures of dilapidated and blight buildings. Those are taken down. Downtown redevelopment continues to be a priority for us. We've invested millions and millions in infrastructure planning with our water and sewer, and currently in the process of having some redundant lines brought to our treatment facility. Do you see anything that we're not doing that, as you get inquiries, that you find that we still need to work on? Is a quality of life still a obstacle? Do you hear that as much as you used to? Or what do you hear when someone wants to come
And I'll let
here?
you get your perspective. We may have different.
Yeah.
I don't immediately know, and Dan may think of something that you're not doing. The quality of life issue, although that is not typically on the checklist of criteria that we get from a new business or industry looking, it's one of those things that when they come to town can take us off the list very fast. And having lived here 35 years, I can also attest to the difference of how Jacksonville is, and how remarkably different it is for people who come back here that have not been here for 30 years. It does make the difference. It is a new Jacksonville, and I think that message is getting out there, quite frankly, among my travels and when I talk to people now. And as you well know, economic development takes a lot of different shades. You know, we operate mostly in the traditional economic development, but you know, sports, tourism, you know, small business, entrepreneurial. There's a lot of different pieces of economic development, which this community has a tendency to embody all of them. Some communities might only depend on one. This community embodies on all of them, and I think that quality of life is certainly adding to all of those, and actually is very important, especially to all of those. Now, as far as something that you're not doing, Dan, is there anything on the checklist? You'd have probably heard from us by now.
Well, it's just, you know, good information to know. Is there something that we're not addressing
I don't,
that should
well,
be
and
addressed?
I've been here 13 years. There's a significant visual improvement to the community, and there was a lot of talk about that when I first got here, and people were getting together to plan and strategize for the future, and so I think that's a definite visual improvement when someone comes to town, when we do get them here for the visit. That makes a significant statement to them that the community is investing in itself. It's a place they would want to be. I think that the investment in the infrastructure is absolutely significant when you bring a consultant to town and they're evaluating a project and they either see what has been done in the last 5 years in terms of capital investments, or they see what the plans are that says this is where we will put it. When we had the consultant look at the property in Holly Ridge, they taught us how to put together the notebook on property, and I can tell you, big piece that they had there was not just the infrastructure you had in place, but what the plans were for that next stage, because that company's going to want to come here and grow. So they need to know that there's a plan to bring those, whether it's water and sewer services or other services in the community, some of which you as a municipality control, some of which you don't, but you would like to influence or entice others by the investments that you make to do the same thing, whether it's a private utility or others that you are hoping to engage. So I think the atmosphere is much improved, Michael, from where we were some years ago. There are always opportunities to do something. I think we still have to continue to market because of just the perception that some folks have of Eastern North Carolina. We do benefit from the fact that folks associate us with the beach as opposed to some other areas in the east. So that's a plus for us. But we have to maximize that opportunity. I think some of the things you've worked on with broadband, trying to create that.
My next question is broadband. I know that in my business, I was just able to get fiber. I had to work through a process. It was a fairly lengthy process, but I was able to secure it, and that's huge for us and the work that we do and our ability to expand. Are you finding that we're making progress with broadband? Is that still an
Broadband is
obstacle?
the-
Because I know it wasn't easy for us to get, and I'm in the
Broadband's
heart of
is the
Jacksonville.
new water, a new issue, whereas now you pretty much have to assume that you have water and sewer capability. In economic development, it's just assumed that it is or will be able to be provided. Broadband, we discovered a couple years ago, is now the new thing that we need to know where it was and what we could get access to in order to answer those questions.
Well, I know just in my operation, our ability to expand would be stifled had we not been able to capture this broadband opportunity, just to be able to do more work at a faster pace, because more and more is done over the fiber, over the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely in that list of when we get the RFI, generally they're sending us some kind of document that we have to respond specifically to. Broadband is among that. Probably 6-7 years ago, it wasn't even on. Telecommunications was on the list, but not specifically broadband. Now that's it's in there, and frankly, I'm having to catch up, but to understand what they're asking me. But yeah, it's an absolute opportunity to differentiate ourselves.
Mr. Willingham.
We've identified downtown redevelopment as being very important to us. What have you all done to target downtown development? And I'm including historic downtown as well as Onslow property and Fisherman's Wharf property. What have you all done to target that, or is that beyond your bailiwick?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a little beyond our scope to totally dedicate on it. But when you start talking about like some of the waterfront properties, et cetera, we've had certainly multiple conversations with Dr. Woodruff and continue, and some of this is related to my real estate background, to always keep that in mind whenever we do get the inquiries with somebody looking to come to town to do business. I mean, I know what properties are available, the types of things that could possibly be on those, and although I might not handle that project as a Joe-Ed project, I know who to hand that off to make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks or that their inquiry is unwarranted. We don't have a specific part of our strategic plan I'll say that is totally dedicated to downtown redevelopment. Quite frankly, we don't want to duplicate work that's being done by other entities, and quite frankly, we have limited resources in our office to focus straight on that. Although I think you know that my heart is, a great deal of that is still left with downtown redevelopment because of the years and hours that I have put into that. So I think it's an incredibly important part of the big puzzle, of the big pie, that continued to move forward.
And you do hear more and more stories. We just had some visitors come to see us, and I take them right to the downtown area. And you know, the ones that have been here before cannot believe it, and they just can't believe it. And it's not just the building that's going on down there, but taking out those ugly old structures. I mean, that's the first thing people comment about. It's just, you hired the right guy.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, we appreciate Jacksonville. You are a tremendous partner, and I think, Michael, to address further your question, you're always there when we come to the table to ask if there's a need or if there's an opportunity to do something, can you do it? And basically, you always say, yes, we can do it. So if there's a need, we do not hesitate to ask or to share with you. And like I said, we've got a close working relationship with both Mr. Massey and Dr. Woodruff, and we appreciate that.
Dragon Slayer concept.
As the second part of this discussion on economic development, I'd like to ask Deanna to come forward and just quickly review road projects, water and sewer projects that we're focusing on. So if y'all can stay for that, I think it'd be beneficial.
Okay.
Sheila, Dan, Ed, appreciate you sitting up at the table there. Bringing us that
Stay here,
report.
okay.
And Dr. Wangler, Joey, and Cheryl, thank you for coming.
This will be different. Yes. Be a little different other than facing. So again, to continue the conversation, what is the city doing knowing that we have economic development needs? As was previously stated, the city is identifying what roads and streets as well as infrastructure, what are improvements that are needed, where are we going, where's that future growth do we see, how we can grow our city, and also to elaborate again on the quality of life issues. So this is the 2018-2027 the STIP project, State Transportation Improvement Plan. The projects that you see in red are currently funded, and those that are green are not funded as of yet. But as you can see from this project, the DOT is working with the city of Jacksonville in identifying the needs of roads that need to be improved as a result of growth, or roads that need to be constructed. One of these projects is the Conceptual Airport Parkway off of the 111 realignment, and this consists of evaluating 111 from 258 to right in front of the airport. Right now, this project is identified as a 4-lane with a median and possibility of 4 intersections. This is not a funded project as of yet, but it is a project that we are currently working on. So what are some water sewer infrastructure needs that the city has identified? One of those is the new connector, which is the Parkwood Western Regional Pump Station project. We've talked about this project in length. This consists of the extension of gravity sewer, trunk main, and various pump stations from along Western Boulevard extension to the land application site. This is as a result of continued growth that we foresee in the Western Boulevard extension corridor. Additionally, we've identified some future growth along US 17 North and US 17 South. The 3 projects that we have identified up there, we will all be talking about in more detail in the upcoming weeks as we review the proposed capital improvement plan. But all of those are a result of either a need from a developer that is interested in developing property, or where we see continued growth opportunity within the city. And again, the quality of life issues that we've talked about gateway improvements, enhancements and beautification efforts at our parks, and again, our clean and green initiatives.
You're winning the battle on the quality of life side, people talking about.
Yeah.
One point that I think we need to at least talk about is the fact that we spend almost $300,000 to to keep Western Boulevard mowed, that we don't get reimbursed from DOT. It's a DOT responsibility. But our commitment to that corridor has been such, and that's sort of the result of that.
And it's also not unusual to see somebody whose name I won't mention in here actually out there picking trash up on the weekends. So, I won't mention her name, Dr. Woodruff. Dedication.
Does he have a twin brother somewhere?
Yeah, I hope not.
Well, talk about aesthetics.
Yeah, the problem is he'd probably be either a Duke fan or an NC State fan.
Thank you.
Mayor, this concludes the first part of the presentation for tonight. And courtesy to the guests, what we may do is recess for just a few minutes and then come back if that's acceptable to you all. Sure.
All right, we'll stand recessed for a few minutes. I'm actually going to stand.
Hey, it's a little different sitting on this side.